Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. We're looking at a dramatic development that could significantly shift the landscape of the war. Early on June 3, 2025, the Crimean Bridge, also called the Kerch Bridge, linking the Russian mainland to the Russian-occupied Crimean Peninsula, was struck by a major underwater explosion. According to the Ukrainian Security Service of Ukraine or SBU, the attack involved around 100 kg of explosives, detonated at around 4:44 a.m., targeting the bridge's underwater supports. The bridge is both a strategic supply route for Russian forces in southern Ukraine and a potent symbol of Moscow's control over Crimea. In this video review, I'll walk through what we know so far, the context of the bridge and its importance, how this operation appears to have been carried out, the immediate and broader consequences for the war, what this means for both sides going forward, and then some thoughts on potential scenarios and what to watch next. Let's begin with the background. The Crimean Bridge spans roughly 19 km across the Kerch Strait, connecting the Taman Peninsula in Russia's Krasnodar Krai with the Kerch Peninsula of Crimea. Built and opened in 2018 after the 24 Russian annexation of Crimea, the bridge was designed to link Crimea more directly to Russia and serve both civilian traffic and, after the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, military logistics. It holds significant value symbolically for the Kremlin. It's not just infrastructure, but a physical statement of annexation and control. Because of that dual nature, symbolic and logistical, the bridge has been a recurring target. Ukraine previously struck it in October 22 and again in July 23, each time causing disruptions, though not complete destruction. The 22-2 explosion was caused by a bomb on a truck, which caused part of the road span to collapse and ignited fuel tankers on a rail section. The 2023 attack damaged 2 of the 4 lanes and caused the bridge to be closed temporarily. Fast forward to June 2025. The SBU says it covertly placed mines or explosive devices beneath the underwater supports of the bridge over a period of months and detonated them early in the morning. They claim the operation was overseen personally by SBU Chief Vasyl Malyuk, and it involved 1,000 kg of TNT, equivalent explosives. In their statement, Crimea is Ukraine, and any acts of occupation will be dealt with harshly. On the Russian side, the official response painted a much more muted picture. They reported that after a temporary suspension of traffic on the bridge for several hours, operations resumed and the bridge remained operational, claiming no significant damage. Now, let's think about the immediate effects. First, the attack demonstrates Ukraine's ability, or at least its claim, to strike deep into territory held or controlled by Russia, targeting not just the front line but strategic rear assets and logistics. That itself could shift calculus in the war. Second, if the bridge's underwater supports are indeed damaged, that may limit or complicate retroops of the bridge and resupply of troops or out of Crimean vehicles moving into or out of Crimea and southern Ukraine. Third, the symbolic value of such an attack is high. Hitting a flagship infrastructure project of the Kremlin sends a message beyond the battlefield. At the same time, a few caveats. The true extent of structural damage remains unclear from independent public sources. Russia disputes the severity of damage and claims normal operations were restored almost immediately. This ambiguity matters because the operational impact will depend on how unusable or risky the bridge has become for Russia. Also, if Russia can repair or bypass the damage, the long-term effect could be limited unless followed up by additional attacks or constraints. Furthermore, civilian traffic and connectivity for the population in Crimea may also be impacted, raising humanitarian and political issues. Zooming out, what does this mean for the war overall? The attack comes in the context of intensified Ukrainian strikes, including a recent drone operation, reportedly targeting Russian strategic bomber bases. that preceded the bridge strike. It suggests Ukraine is aiming to challenge Russian logistical depth and to project power in unexpected places. For Russia, it may force a reevaluation of the safety and security of its supply routes, especially in areas formerly considered relatively secure. It could also impose additional costs, reinforcing bridges, rerouting supplies, increasing air defense, all of which drain resources. Politically, there are implications too. The attack may strengthen Ukraine's hand in talking about its ability to strike critical nodes of Russia's war machine. It may also influence how Western partners view Ukraine's offensive potential and the need to sustain support. For Russia, the image of invulnerability is damaged. If public perception takes hold that its rear is vulnerable, morale and strategic credibility may suffer. Let me outline some scenarios going forward. Scenario A. Russia accepts the damage is significant, suspends traffic, diverts supplies via sea or other land routes, increases defenses, but the bridge remains a bottleneck and Ukraine continues attacks. In that case, Russia's southern logistics might be slowed, and Ukraine may press more operations in southern Ukraine and Crimea. Scenario B. Russia quickly repairs or mitigates the damage, resumes normal operations, and uses the attack as propaganda. We withstood it. Then the long-term impact is modest, though the symbolic effect remains. Scenario C. Russia escalates significantly. Massive retaliation, increased airstrikes, harsher measures in occupied territories, in response to being struck in its rear. That raises the risk of wider escalation and maybe more civilian impact. Scenario D. Ukraine uses this attack as leverage to push for negotiations, or at least to shift the war's momentum. Russia may respond by hardening its positions and refusing talks, further prolonging the conflict. What to watch now? 1. Traffic data or satellite imagery on the bridge, whether repairs are underway or the span is still compromised. 2. Russian logistics flows. Are there reports of supply delays, rerouting, or increased congestion in Crimea or the south? 3. Follow-up Ukrainian operations, whether this attack is isolated or part of a larger campaign targeting logistical infrastructure, rail, ports, roads, behind Russian lines. 4. Russian reaction, increased security measures, infrastructure hardening, or perhaps retaliation attacks elsewhere. 5. Western response, whether allies interpret this as Ukraine gaining offensive momentum, and whether that alters aid, training, or strategy. From a broader strategic perspective, this attack reflects changing dynamics in the war. Initially, much of Ukraine's strategy was defensive, holding its ground and waiting for attrition. But over time, Ukraine has increasingly sought to seize initiative, targeting supply lines, infrastructure, conducting raids, and now large-scale covert operations like this one. Russia, which had enjoyed relative freedom of interior logistics from Ukraine's immediate reach, is being challenged. That shift matters because wars of attrition depend heavily on how well one side of maintains supply and movement of men, equipment, and ammunition. If Ukraine disrupts Russia's ability to sustain its forces in the south and Crimea, over time, that could open opportunities for Ukraine to regain territory or force Russia into more difficult positions. At the same time, the attack signals the risks. When Ukraine goes on the offensive in new domains, underwater mining, drones, there is an escalation risk. Russia may respond asymmetrically. Bombs at the bridge may lead to bombs at Ukrainian cities, or Russian air operations may intensify. The infrastructure war may deepen. Civilian populations, even in Crimea and Russia's rear areas, may feel the effects, and that can alter domestic political calculations. Let's also reflect on what this means for the innocents in the conflict. While the SBU claims there were no civilian casualties in the bridge strike, Any attack on infrastructure always carries the risk of unintended consequences. Traffic disruptions, delays in essential goods, evacuation complications, or maintenance burdens for local populations under occupation. Likewise, increased militarization of such infrastructure and retaliatory operations will likely impose more burdens on civilians living in contested zones. In terms of messaging and morale, for Ukraine, the successful claim of striking the bridge is a morale boost to its forces and population. It reaffirms that even high-profile, heavily defended targets can be reached. For Russia, even if the structural damage is limited, the perception of vulnerability is significant. President Vladimir Putin's project of the bridge as a showpiece is tarnished. The Russian narrative of security behind the lines faces a challenge. Historically, infrastructure attacks have often played out not just in immediate tactical effect, but in strategic fatigue. For example, supply disruptions impose cumulative effects. More delay, more cost, more maintenance, more rerouting, all of which erode capability over time. If Ukraine can keep pressing these nodes consistently, the cumulative may be larger than any single strike. On the other hand, if Russia can stabilize its logistics, harden vital nodes, and diversify them, then this attack might turn out as a high-profile anecdote, but not a turning point. So, to sum up my main takeaways, this event is potentially a major escalation in the logistics war between Ukraine and Russia. It underscores Ukraine's evolving operational reach and Russia's vulnerabilities behind front lines. The bridge attack may shift supply dynamics in the south of Ukraine, but the full impact depends on how badly the bridge is damaged, how quickly Russia responds, and how sustained Ukraine's pressure becomes. Politically and symbolically, the attack is a win for Ukraine, but whether it translates into decisive military damage remains to be seen. For Russia, it's a wake-up call. How the Kremlin and Russian armed forces respond will determine whether this attack is a momentary embarrassment or a catalyst of deeper problems. In closing, what matters is how both sides adapt. Ukraine must follow up, exploit the disruption, and make logistics a continual target. Russia must repair, protect, and diversify its lines of supply, or it may suffer incremental losses in its southern theater. The next few weeks and months will tell. Will we see more attacks like this? Will the bridge remain contested, or will Russia secure it? Will supply bottlenecks begin to show up in Russian operations? Those questions matter for the direction of the war. Thanks for watching. If you found this breakdown helpful, please like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you think. Will this bridge attack turn into a game changer or be just another chapter in a long war? I'll see you in the next one.